there, my name is Linda Jo Martin, and on YouTube I'm known as Book Lady. Such an original name. I thought it sounded a little bit like Bag Lady, and so I thought that was a great name for an older booktuber. At the time I named my channel, which was about 4 years ago. Anyhow, today I'd like to talk to you a little bit about this writer, Stella Walthall Patterson, who wrote Dear Madam. This book is a memoir about an 80-year-old woman who decided to go live on a remote mining claim in the Klamath River Valley back in the late 1940s. And while she was there, she wrote a book about it. Now, Stella Walthall Patterson had written a few other things. She had written a lot of short stories, some of which had been published, and never had written a full book-length manuscript so far as I know. However, she decided that she was going to write about her experience on the mining claim. And thank goodness she did, because she has been such an amazing inspiration for so many of us who lived there or still live there in the Klamath River Valley, and for older women really who want to do something amazing and exciting with their lives. So when she went to live on that mining claim, there were no highways, there was no air transportation or anything like that. Now, if a person in Happy Camp these days was extremely sick, they could be air transported via helicopter to Medford or to Redding for medical treatment. But at the time Stella went there, there was nothing of that sort. And so for an 80-year-old woman to go out there into the middle of nowhere in a river valley in a very remote place was an amazing thing in itself. And to read about her experiences there in this book, Dear Madam, is just very inspiring, not to mention extremely amusing as well. So a few years ago, before I left that area, I decided that it would be cool to remember this woman by having a day set aside each year, which we called Dear Madam Day at the time. Now, my friend Judy has carried on this tradition, and there has been a Dear Madam Symposium, she calls it, a Dear Madam Symposium every year, usually around Stella's birthday, which I think is just awesome. I'm hoping to get back there to participate in it again one of these days. So there's also a companion volume now. When we started the Dear Madam Day, which was 2011, this book was not even written. It wasn't published, but it was written by one of her relatives, actually a married couple that were related to her, and it is the story of how her book came to be. The story of Stella. Dear Madam, who was she? So fascinating. Now, when Dear Madam was published, it was a Book of the Month selection and became very popular. Unfortunately, Stella Walthall Patterson, the writer, had passed away right before the publication. So, you never know who you're going to affect. Her book has been so popular and so many people have loved it. I recommend it. If you want an amusing memoir to read, this is a good one. Now I'm going to go on to read one of the short stories I've been writing. If you have been watching my writing videos all along, you already know this, but if you haven't, I will just say it very quickly. Each week I choose a number relating to a story that I have written this year, and the stories are all flash fiction. They're very short, and I'm writing them so that at the end of the year I will have a collection of stories to publish on Amazon. So I choose a number out of the sugar bowl, and the number relates to a story that I have written, and this is number 19, so I'm going to read you story number 19 today. I do that randomly because I like to surprise myself with what I'm going to read, and I have already forgotten most of these things, so it always comes as a surprise to me. And this is written to the prompt that she was a red-headed woman. So, Candy wasn't her real name. It was the name she took for herself after her mother died. Her mother wouldn't have approved. Her birth name was Caroline. The goals her mother had for her never materialized. She couldn't fit herself into that perfect mold. Now she would never have to. Attempting the impossible wasn't good for her. It only accentuated her imperfections. Candy's hair was newly dyed red. She was ready for a new chapter in her life and did everything she could to change her appearance. New hair color, new clothes, new car, new everything, and now it was time to say farewell to the old. Goodbye, old house. It was empty now. A for sale sign posted in the front yard reminded her of the permanence of her decision. She got into the car and drove downtown, looking at the disappointing old dusty Midwest town. Despite living here all her life, 37 years, she had no close friends here. She wasn't even going to say goodbye to the others. They wouldn't miss her. She went to the post office one last time to check for mail and close her P.O. box without a forwarding address. All the bills were already paid. Let us know when you get an address, the postmaster said. Candy just smiled slightly. She didn't bother to say, not likely. It was time to take off, but she had no plans, no intentional future, nothing. Half an hour later, she sat at a roadside rest area studying a map. Should she go north, south, east, or west? She had no destination. I must make a plan, she told herself. How about national parks? Should I go visit each one? She checked her wristwatch. 10 a.m. Plenty of time left for an adventure that day. There's no time like the present, she said to herself. I just need to figure this thing out. She walked back to her car. Suddenly, it felt lonely. How would she survive? What do I really want in life? She asked herself. I just wanted freedom to get out of that town. Now what? She turned all this over in her mind a few times as she drove north on the interstate toward no destination in particular. Then it came to her. She got herself out of the small, dusty town, but she hadn't gotten the small, dusty town out of her. Despite her changed outer appearance, new name, and pretty new car, she was still the small-town girl inside. Would it always be that way? Welcome to your new life, Candy Girl, she told herself. You're changing now, inside and out. And that's when she made her decision to go meet new people, talk to them, and find out what made them different than the people in that small, dusty town. Somehow, by encountering new people, she would find new pieces of herself. That's a plan, she said out loud, an intention without a destination. Just perfect for me. So, I think that one's going in the book. Anyhow, I have a couple of books here that I pulled off my bookshelf just a few minutes ago. This one is Emotional Structure. It's actually a book for screenwriters. Creating the story beneath the plot. I never read this book. I bought it and then I didn't read it. I wonder if anybody else out there has. It looks good. I mean, it's important to have an emotional structure for your fictional characters. Like the little girl in the dusty town who wanted to get out and go do something different. She sounds like she was really bored there and not very well loved. And so I thought I'd learn from that book. Not sure when I'm going to read it. but it does look like an important book for a fiction writer or for a screenwriter. And then this one, Word Painting, is about description. A Guide to Writing More Descriptively by Rebecca McClanahan. Now in 2013 I left Happy Camp, and right before I did, I gave away all my writing books except for these 2 books. And so I think it's about time that I got around to reading them. And let me know if you have read them. I would like to know what you think of them. So, on to the next part of the video, which is to read something that was written by Jack Kerouac. It's on page 18 of this book. He wrote a list of 30 suggestions for writers, and each week I read one of the suggestions and make a few comments about it if I can. So this week we're on suggestion number 14 out of 30. He said, like Proust, be an old Teahead of Time. Proust wrote a book called In Search of Lost Time. It's actually a series. I haven't read it, so I don't know much about his search for lost time. I do know that a Teahead is a term for a person who is using marijuana. So I don't know if Jack Kerouac was saying that Proust was using marijuana when he wrote that book, that series. I really couldn't be the judge of that thing. I do know that for myself, I will not be a Teahead. Doesn't work for me. It's like I need to have my entire consciousness clear and free of any mind expanding or changing drugs or alcohol. I don't use that either. So for me, it doesn't work to write under the influence of anything. I need to have my mind the way that it was intended to be as God created it, and that helps me to write. So I'm not going to go after that particular suggestion. If you want to be a Teahead of Time, that is your business. But it would be interesting to read Proust and see a little bit of what that was about. I haven't read his work, so it's apparently been very popular over the years. It was written in the early days of the 20th century, and that's about all I know about it. So that will be it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll get back to you in another video.